today we're here to basically get into some professional development as artists. And as a working artist seminar today, we're presenting to you artist project development, where Abraham and I will be going over really some of the core things that are essential, I want to say, to creating an artist project. And it goes all the way from the very beginning, when you have the idea, all the way through to the execution. But for the people that don't know what DSTL Arts is, DSTL Arts is a nonprofit arts mentorship organization that inspires, teaches, and hires emerging artists from underserved communities. And we do that through a variety of programs, which include things like this one, the Poet Artist Development Program. We also offer creative writing workshops as well as other artist-led workshops for the community. And really, the name of DSTL Arts says it all. The acronym is Develop Skills and Transcend Limits Through the Arts, which is what we are striving to do through all of our different programs. Those programs, again, include the Poet Artist Development Program, and we offer short-term artist residencies through this particular program, as well as professional development opportunities, and also the opportunity to potentially publish a manuscript, a short chapbook length manuscript through this program. For people interested in developing their creative writing skills, kind of, just getting their feet wet, we offer the Conchas y Café Bilingual Community Writing Workshop Series. It's a 12-week series that at the very end of each 12 weeks produces a zine by the same name, the Conchas y Café zine. We also have our Art Block zine, which is a biannual publication that collects the work of emerging artists from LA County, and also our latest zine, the Artistic Zine, which is now going to be an annual zine that is featuring exclusively the work of autistic individuals who are amazing artists and representing their community. And to start us off, I wanted to kind of frame some of the reasons why we go through this process of developing a plan. Artist projects are not always your, just let me put something together because I feel like it. There's typically a purpose to it. And I think that this particular short little piece of writing that I found by Eduardo Galeano kind of sums up, at least metaphorically, what it is that we're doing as artists. It's called Window into the Word, and it's part 1. And Eduardo Galeano writes, storytellers, story singers, can only tell their tales while the snow falls. That is how tradition dictates. The indigenous people of the North of America take much care with this business of stories. They say that when stories are heard, plants don't trouble themselves with growing, and birds forget about food for their offspring. Now I'm gonna stop right here real quick and just let y'all, kind of take in what Eduardo Galeano is saying. And if you have any thoughts about what this means for you, please feel free to chime in. I see a hand raised from Tina and David.
So a few days ago, I was Googling why do people stop reading, or why are less people reading? And I came across an article from from Psychology Today, which is an okay magazine. I mean, psychology is kind of what I do for a living. It's kind of a pop magazine, but it was really interesting because it was talking about the human need to experience stories and to hear and read and just to experience stories, basically, and in all its forms, whether it's reading, whether it's watching, whether it's listening, movies, TV. And I mean, that's absolutely dead on, because it's a basic human need, is what Psychology Today was saying. Yeah. Like eating and drinking, basically, that we need to have it in our lives. And it's true. I mean, all our entertainment is primarily based on story. So that, I mean, it really, I mean, it's something that you know inside and instinctively, but to read it in print was like, wow. I wish everybody could know that, just like hear it, that yes, you part of your life is that you need to have story in your life in order to live a better and fuller life.
Yeah, that's a great insight, and I definitely agree with that. Mauricio, I see you raise your hand.
It kind of reminds me of the Dead Poet Society's Robin Williams' character when he says how, you know, we need our scientists and we need our, our engineers, but at the end of the day, like the poets are the ones that kind of keep the stories alive, and they're the ones that like people strive to be after they've kind of met their needs in terms of like shelter and gaining a living and stuff like that. And we look at today, and we still have stories. They've just been changed into different forms of media, like movies and shows, and that sometimes the stories aren't you know well written, but they're still stories nonetheless. They still kind of show us how to you know how how to live our lives, and how to believe. And a lot of stories kind of go back to those ancient teachings that we grew up when we didn't have those mediums, and we just kind of sat around the fire and learned of legends from our elders.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it is really important, that we value storytelling. And it's obvious that, storytelling comes in many forms. The contemporary definition of storytelling, for people, they probably think of, I don't know, novelas or, movies, TV shows. Uh, Poetry isn't really considered storytelling in a more traditional sense, but it is still telling a story, the story of the writer, the story of the speaker.
Right.
Photography tells a story, illustration tells a story. All forms of media are forms of storytelling. And I think that, for us as artists, it's really important to remember that in order for that to happen, in order for the storytelling to occur, we need to actually invest our own time and our own efforts into it, which might mean sacrificing certain things like, sleep, or, sacrificing, maybe the infinite scroll on social media, so that we can actually get to work. But it also means that your audience is also sacrificing something too. It is really valuable for us to remember that what we put into it is what we will get out of it. So, keep those things in mind, and keep those things in mind, especially as you think about the projects that you potentially will be creating, whether that be through this program or, through just simply your own artistic need. Ani, I see you raised your hand.
Um, I'm really intrigued by the by the metaphor of seasons and time and snow falling. It's a at first I took it like we can only create stories when when we're in a not quite first my thing was that it's during hard times that we're forced to contemplate, and that kind of spurs the inspiration to tell stories about that time. um and then I got that there's if the plants stop growing while the stories are being heard, then it's really about a time of quiet solitude where you stop doing all these things for survival in order to let these stories be heard, and
Mhm.
what that means for the storyteller, that we have to take time out of our lives and dedicate to that storytelling process, that it is separate and has to be kind of separated and isolated from the rest of, living and doing your life, like the normal stuff. I'm still processing it. I don't know, but I thought I would just bring it up so that other people can chime in and say what they think about that.
Well, I think that's definitely what at least I got out of it. Is that there are certain things that we have to consider. And I think one of the things that we need to consider is that we are working artists, right? This is a job. This is a career path. And for us who are here and watching this even afterwards, it's an investment of time, it's an investment of effort, and it's an investment of resources. And if we're going to invest that time and those resources, then we need to do it with a plan. And we need to do it also with an understanding that our audience is also investing time and effort and resources in even being a part of our artistic journey. So, it's a big responsibility to have. And I think it's something that, clearly you all are taking serious. And it's something that I certainly, hope that the tools that we teach you today help you in the process and maybe make it a little bit easier in the process as you develop your own projects. Excellent observations, Ani. Let's go back to this quote one more time. And, just again, I want to reiterate, this is, at least for me, what this quote is saying is that, there's an investment happening, right? And if you want to read more, this comes from Las Palabras Andantes by Eduardo Galeano, who was an Uruguayan journalist, novelist, and author. Translated, Las Palabras Andantes roughly translates to the walking words. So it's definitely a good book. I just picked it up, started reading it recently, at least portions of it, and I've enjoyed every part of it so far. So the big question is, what is an artist project? The short answer, as you can see, is that it's a deliverable product for a particular audience. It's pretty straightforward when you think about the short answer, but the long answer is a lot more, fleshed out than that short one, in that it also includes, the clearly defined goals and everything that you need before, during, and after to properly execute the project. It's not called, an artist book. It's called an artist project, right? The artist book would be your final product, but the project is the entire process of developing that final product. And those, projects could culminate in the creation of a lot of different things, just like you see listed here. It can be a publication like a zine or a book. It could be even just simply a pamphlet, but it could also be things like an art show. It could be an exhibition that's curated in a particular way. It can be a performance that you put together with other people. And it can also be a digital experience, especially now, we're living in a digital age where you can put together an artist project that is virtual reality or augmented reality. It's interactive. It could be a podcast, that could also be considered an artist project. And of course, a video, if you're creating videos and content in that way, it also is an artist project. And that's how you would potentially pitch it to your funders. You would say, this is going to be the end result of my project. But whatever it is, it does require a particular level of planning, and a level of planning that I would argue happens in 3 phases in order for it to be completed. The first phase is defining the project goals. We've talked about this a little bit already as a group. We did talk about this in the very first professional development seminar that we provided, where we talk about, how do you create a mission statement, for you as an artist, right? For you as a business owner. For a project, you could think of the theme of the project as also the mission statement of that particular project. It should be short, really easy to articulate. You might call it your elevator pitch, but the best way to really approach it is to really think of it as like 1 to 2 sentences that clearly describe what this project is for. It's also really important that you define for yourself very early on, is this going to be a publication? And if so, what kind of format are you going to use? If it's going to be a book, there's a certain expectation of what people have as books. If it's going to be a poster, there's certain expectations that people have of posters. So you need to begin defining those things early on. The same goes for an art show. If your artist project is going to culminate in a show or some sort of exhibition, you need to begin defining what that looks like early on. And of course, same as a digital presentation. You also need to really, really think about who is your primary audience. You need to define for yourself, who this project is for, and how involved are they going to be in the development of it. This is going to tie into things like your marketing plan. It's going to tie into things like, who you're going to ask for funds for this project to be executed. It's going to really involve a lot of different entry points for people if you really define your audience early on. Also, you need to have a deadline. No matter what it is, no matter how large of a project, you really should, at the very beginning, establish for yourself a deadline of when this is going to be presented to the world as a final product. If you don't have a deadline, then all of the benchmarks that you create, they're not going to be fruitful in a sense. They're not going to motivate you to complete your project in a timely manner. So at the very, very beginning, set yourself a very clear date and maybe even time when you want to present this particular project. There's a quote that I found from Christina Halverson, who is the writer of Content Strategy for the Web. Christina Halverson is also the CEO and founder of Brain Traffic, which is a platform or a service that really helps people develop content strategies, as you can see, marketing strategies for websites, for social media, and more. But I think that what she wrote here is very relevant when it comes to how you begin defining your artist project. She wrote, "Quality, relevant content can't be spotted by an algorithm. You can't subscribe to it. You need people, actual human beings, to create or curate it." Curation is an art, and it's going to be one of those things that, especially if you define your goals early on, curation is going to be a major part of how you move your project onto the next phase. And with that, let's practice the art of curation. Abraham, it's all yours, man.
What's up, people? So today I'm gonna do a lot of self-promoting. So I created this calendar, which is 2022, and it's a calendar on houses, and I'll probably discuss more about why I chose this theme. But since we're gonna be working on something similar, I'm gonna discuss that probably towards the end, and I'm gonna actually drop my email for somebody if they wanna order one. That's my email. And without further ado, we're gonna talk about a little bit of curating, which basically is putting things together to make them cohesive, to make it work. It's either a gallery, a book, or a movie. You have to curate even scenes for a movie, right? Like which ones go together, the style of the movie, and their colors. So for that, we're gonna today, let me share my screen. Create actually a calendar as a group. So basically for you, I put a lot of photos that I have taken throughout the time, and we're gonna start basic curating them. Yeah, we're gonna go through all of them, which is a bunch. You can see it's a lot of them. we'll try to finish as soon as possible. But the rule for today practice, or we can even call it a game, is basically we're gonna put colors into each one to see what type of photos I have here for you. So the colors that I have are, we have red, yellow, green, blue, and purple. So we're gonna try to create groups basically to create the calendar. So without further ado, we're gonna start with the first photo. You guys can see it, right? What color do you wanna put to this one? Again, we have red, yellow, green, blue, and purple.
It's blue.
Let's go for blue, okay? So remember, all the photos that are similar to blue, we're gonna put on blue. So next one, what colors you wanna put to this photo?
White.
No, we don't have white. We have, let me repeat the colors.
Oh, sorry.
It's red, yellow, green, and purple, because blue, we already took it with the first one.
Yellow.
Yellow, okay. Yellow. Okay, next photo. What color do you guys think this photo is? Blue, let's put a box name to blue. Let's say that. I think that will make it a little easier. What do you guys see in the first picture, which is the blue? It's the mountain.
Landscapes.
Landscape, okay. So let's put that title to blue. Landscape, it's gonna be blue, right?
Uh-huh.
The second one, it's yellow. What do you guys see?
Portrait.
Portrait, what else?
Light.
Okay, portrait light, okay, yellow.
Yellow for the other one too, because it shares the sun.
And
As
so
a-
the next one, it's just the sun. What kind of box of the ones we have so far you guys think goes along with this one? Because we have nature, which is the blue box, and then yellow, which is portrait. What color do you guys think it is?
Blue, I guess.
Blue.
Exactly. And we'll get to more into the decisions, but little by little, I'm just trying to make groups remember. The next photo is this.
So that's yellow since it's a portrait and it's an object?
Well, this again, as you said, it's an object, but if you want to put into context of light, and it has light, maybe you can say yellow. This is going to be more your choosing. You guys gonna create another box, or do you want to keep it in a different box? It's up to
I
you.
think it's been
Well,
At least
I
two
feel like it's a
summers.
different category.
Different subject?
definitely.
Yeah, like it's,
Okay.
it's still life almost.
Okay. So since we already have taken blue and yellow, we have other colors that you guys can choose to create a new category, which is red, green, or purple. Which color do you guys want this piece to go to? We have red,
It looks like red
Green.
in the chat.
red. Okay, let's go for red. Okay. Next one is a picture of this gentleman. What color do you guys think this one goes with?
I mean, I would make this a different category because it's black and white photography.
Uh-huh. And what else do you see that's different than the other ones?
The POV is different.
Okay. 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 So so far we have 1, 2, 3, 4 different categories. One is blue, yellow, red, and green. Okay. Next. So this one is yellow, right?
Correct.
Next.
Green,
Green.
Green. Yeah.
Okay.
yellow.
Thanks. This one.
That's green too, isn't it?
It's blue in the chat.
Blue.
Blue?
Okay.
Is
see
it
in
a,
the
is
chat.
there a there may be a structure there, but it feels more like a landscape.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
It's a landscape. What about this one?
Is that
Okay.
Pasadena?
Yes.
Is it a person in the foreground and then
Yes. So
Yeah.
if you think about it, like you're already thinking, Annie, this one could go in both, right?
yeah.
Can be a little
One
bit
for
of
architecture and one for
yes.
art. Yeah.
Yeah, and a portrait. But since we don't have a way to split those two, and this type of way, we'll just keep it in mind. So I'm gonna put in yellow for the time being. What do you guys think on this one?
Green.
Green? Okay. Okay, so in terms of a calendar, we need 12 months, right? So we need 12 photos in order for us to make a calendar. And since we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for animals, we're gonna rule that one out. Then we have blue. Blue, definitely we have around more than 12 photos. So we have blue as an option to create a calendar. And then we have, I guess green also will count as a calendar. So we have yellow, which is people. Then we have green for architecture and sculptures. And then we have blue for nature and landscape. Which color do you guys want for us to create a calendar? Okay, let's go for blue. So this is how I create some of these calendars, right? So we have two ways of creating like a calendar in terms of position. And as you can see, like in the one that I show you, this will be kind of how you spread two pages once it opens it. The first one, I'm gonna call it basically we're gonna put the picture here. And the first one's gonna be the month, like such. But do you guys think it will be better to do a landscape for basically landscape in nature or portrait style, meaning the format?
Landscape.
I
in
think
the
for
chat.
we're doing a landscape or natural,
Mhm.
the landscape theme. So I think most
That
of
one
those
will-
pictures were, yeah, I would go with the landscape. So you
Great.
can see.
And see, those are the choices you have to start making. Which one goes with what type of subject you have and the type of media you're gonna use, in this case for a calendar. So for the month of January, what photo do you guys want to put on here? Just gonna go through them fast and you guys tell me to stop or... So that will be basically how you open the calendar. We're gonna see the photo on top and then you're gonna see the month. And so next we're gonna move on to the next month, which is February. Which photo do you guys wanna choose for February?
I was thinking maybe the snow with the dog with the snow should be our maybe our December, no?
December? Excellent. And yeah, that's one of the things you have to start considering which
We don't
photo
have to
goes
be
with
with
what
this.
month as well, right? So, okay, what about these ones? And again,
It's
you
those.
also have to consider, like, for example, this photo, if it was more of a time constraint, I will put it in a different way because it's not exactly a landscape type of file. It'd be better if we have changed it, the calendar to a different format. Well, those are decisions you have to take once you are creating a project. Also, the type of font that you would like to go along with your calendar and other things. And this again was an exercise, and we're gonna move along because I know we have a bunch of other information that we're gonna cover. And so this is basically how will you end up creating a project, right? You start searching what pieces go along with the type of project you want. In this case, we wanted a calendar. It's about nature and landscape. So we're creating for that. And then we'll divide it into what goes in what month. And then we create the fonts and other stuff. So without further ado, we're gonna move on to Luis. He has more information to cover.
All right, thank you, Abraham.
Thank you very
And
much.
as all of you, clearly saw, right? This is a process, and creating an artist project
Yeah.
definitely is going to be involved and time consuming. I wasn't exactly keeping track of the time, but I think we took almost half an hour. It felt like to just get 2 pages of a calendar done, which isn't that bad, all things considered. But there's certainly a lot more that goes into creating a particular project. So let's continue on. Now, obviously, Abraham got into a little bit of what it means to choose the format that's appropriate for the project. Again, print publications and other physical media. There's certain things that you need to consider that will impact your curating and also the costs. A calendar, for example, costs a different amount than, say, doing an artist book or doing a chapbook or a newspaper. Print publications and physical media, they have a particular cost associated to them, but the benefit of having a physical media project is that you can sometimes recover the cost of the physical media, whether that be the cost of a canvas. You can sell your painting or whatever you created on the canvas at a higher price to cover the cost of your materials. When it comes to doing exhibitions and performances, there's venue rentals, there's framing and hanging. There's even like wayfinding graphics. If you're going to put like an explanation or the titles of pieces up on the wall, you need to print those things. So those are other kinds of expenses that go in addition to printing, for doing a performance or for doing an art show. And then that way you would probably actually charge tickets, for entry, to recover the costs of those things. Sometimes performances can also be done in partnership with other people, so you can split the cost with other artists that are doing similar work. Digital presentations might be the most cost effective. If you have a laptop and you're able to produce a PDF, that's a very simple, easy way, usually pretty inexpensive, to actually disseminate. Right, PDFs can be emailed to people. They can be hosted on a website for download. So there's definitely cost efficiency there, but the unfortunate part of digital media is that digital media means digital technological requirements that aren't always accessible. So it's something to consider. That said, digital media can live longer. So, artwork that you created now, maybe, a year from now, people might not remember it, but 10 years from now, people might rediscover it. And it might live on, longer and in different eras than what would have been possible with physical media, especially because physical media deteriorates, right? It doesn't last forever. As part of the handout here, as part of this slide deck, you'll also be receiving other additional information. These are handouts that I've created in the past that do give more detailed information and things for you to consider, especially if you're going to be creating physical media. You could create like a catalog that goes with an art show. You can create a photo book that goes along with a photo exhibit. You can even do broadsides and posters that represent your artwork and even poetry in a particular way. So all of that stuff, this is available here for you to think about, things to give you ideas on how to present your work. There's also a second part to that particular section that gives you more questions to consider. Most of those questions are really related to, cost and how much something is going to impact your bottom line when it comes down to it. So I recommend that you look at this on your own time, especially if you're going to be self-funding your artist projects. But that's what the second part, right? The second phase of planning an artist project is about, right? You need to establish what your assets are and what your needs are. This isn't just about budgeting. Budgeting is a big part of this, but it's also about really thinking about what is available to you now. And one way to think about that is, how does your project fit into the current environment? Are there other people doing similar work to yours? And if that is the case, and let's say you want to put on a performance, why not consider reaching out to them and potentially split the cost on, renting a venue? It's also really important when you do that, though, to ask yourself, are you ready to enter into contractual agreements? Are you ready to develop a memorandum of understanding if you're going to create a workshop or something like that where it involves partnering with someone else? There's other things too that are low cost or free that you could consider as a resource and an asset. Things like support networks, writers circles or writers groups that you're a part of. Um, Meetup, the platform, it's kind of like a website where people can arrange for different types of groups. And I've seen there's artist groups where people get together and draw. There's photo walking groups, right, where people go on photo walks and together as a group they support each other in taking photos. So there's different ways in which you can be engaged in community-based workshops that might also help you actually create the artwork that you're going to turn into a project. Um, and of course, there's funding, right? Do you have money already saved for paying for some of the materials? Do you have a job that's related? And could you maybe somehow work in your project as part of your job? Uh, you know, if you're a screen printer and you're taking on, projects that are, screen printing related, maybe you can slip in, a I don't know, like a screen or two, as part of that budget to help you, create your own work. Is perhaps offering a writing workshop in your related job duties, and if so, maybe you can use that as a time for you to do some writing and to teach about the process of writing, right? Are there ways for you to sort of dovetail some of those things together? And of course, there's grants and fellowships you can apply to. You can, also think about like discounts, especially if you're printing. The more items that you're printing and you're doing a larger print run, the deeper the discount you'll usually get. So there's little things that you can manage that way. And there's also in-kind services, right? Things that are donated to you. If you're teaching a workshop, right, and you have a space at like a library, for example, and they're offering you the chance to do a free writing workshop, that still has a value, a monetary value to it. It's a resource and an asset that you can include in your budget. And also, this is a time where you really need to think about, is your budget fully reflecting the costs that go into creating your project? It's really important that within the budget that you create, you also budget for time. Time is very valuable. And if you have a job outside of the artwork, that you're creating, outside of your artist project, that time and the way that you allocate your personal time, is definitely an asset or a resource, or a resource, right? So make sure that you do budget for that. Also budget for those startup costs. There's certain things that you might need to buy to even be able to get started, like a printer or a laptop or a camera. There's certain things that you would need to put in place before you can even complete a project. So take an assessment of that and make sure that you account for that. And then all the other things that we've already talked about, including evaluation costs. And we'll talk about evaluation. That is a really important part of creating a project. Remember, a budget is a moral document. That's how I was taught. That's what I've always used as a way to approach budgeting. And when we talk about a moral document, it's really about, in the sense of a budget, it's really about what are the things that you value the most. And as artists, you should really value your time. Therefore, when you create a budget, and you will be receiving a copy of this, make sure that you add in here something like how much you want to earn, either a year or, weekly, monthly, whatever. But think about it in terms of, if this was a 40-hour, work week, how much do you want to get paid per hour? That's a really important way for you to allocate for time, and, for you to be able to quantify to donors, to patrons, why certain things cost what they cost. This sample budget that you see here, gives you a sense of what are the other things that you should be budgeting for as a working artist, including things like medical insurance. If you're working for yourself as a business owner, you really should be doing whatever you can to make sure that you you are healthy, and taken care of in the event of an emergency. Also, you may need to pay into Social Security and Medicare, as well as California unemployment. Those are things that are part of the tax process. And whether you're paying in advance or paying, when you file your taxes at the end of the year, beginning of the year, those are things that you're going to need to have saved for. So those are really important things that you also consider adding to a budget. And then if you have other people that are helping you, an assistant, an intern, etc., and you're paying them, you also need to budget for that. Now, this particular worksheet is pre-filled with different formulas that will help you calculate some of these things automatically. This PDF version just gives you some of the notes, and it does help you at least get a strong sense of what you need. But there's also a section here, aside from the salary, right? Your personnel, there are overhead things. So, rent, custodial services, your utilities, cell phone, all of those kinds of things are things that you also need to include in a budget. Postal services, if you're going to be shipping things, if you're going to be licensing work to reuse it as part of your artist project, or if you're going to be paying someone to create a particular piece of artwork that you then incorporate into yours, that's going to require licensing fees. So all of these things are things to really think about. What do you have available to you now? What can you get at a free or reduced rate? All of these things are good things for you to include as part of your budget, and assign them a tag, assign them a category that helps you incorporate that into a budget. And again, the in-kind thing, donations of venues, volunteers that help you, materials, those are things that if you get for free, again, they have a value, and they have a way for you to use that if you're applying to grants and other kinds of things. You can use that as a way to say, this is what the community is investing in my artwork. And then, of course, if you're doing a program or a project, there's very specific costs associated to those things that are separate from your overhead costs, from your in-kind donations, and obviously different from your personnel costs. So there's a whole section for that, including printing, if you're going to be including printing as part of that. And that includes things like stickers, patches, tote bags, any kind of screen printed materials. Those are things that you should also include as part of your project, if it's going to be a longer term thing where you are say crowdfunding, and you have to provide rewards in a sense to your backers. And then remember, just like I was saying, as you take a full assessment of the assets that you have, this is where you can include what money you have coming in, what money you have already on reserve, and that kind of thing. So again, this is a worksheet that you're going to be able to use when it's uploaded to Google Classroom. It will be a resource for you to be able to begin the process now of developing your artist project. And I also included as part of this, basic formulas that you can use if you want to create your own from scratch using Excel or Google Sheets. There's also a second part here. I'll give you a chance to go over this on your own. These are basic breakdowns of the different ways in which you can, pursue other funding for your projects. And then this is another worksheet or handout that describes the difference between contracting and licensing work, and the difference between being an independent contractor and being an employee as part of a job, creative job, if you will. So, yeah. Any questions so far? We're gonna, we still got a lot to go, but I want to make sure everybody's kind of on the same page. Y'all good? Yeah. All right. I see some head nods. All right. Let's continue on. So here's a quick note on contracts and MOU. MOU stands for Memorandum of Understanding. These are really, really important things for you to use, especially if you're going to work with someone else. There's a difference between, a partnership and like a collaboration. A collaboration, in my, general non-legal advice, is going to require you to really consider using a contract. When you're collaborating with someone, that essentially means that you are creating artwork together to be combined into a single project. So for that purpose, you really need to define who owns the intellectual property that is being created. And in that sense, you need to also say, in a contract specifically, this is how much this person is getting for their work, and this is how much this person is getting for their work. And that's all part of using intellectual property language. Think of your artwork as intellectual property. It is your property as the creator, and you need to protect your rights over that property. So use contracts. Contracts can very clearly articulate how long the property is being licensed, and which are the acceptable uses, right? What are the use cases, and for how long. If you're licensing work from someone to incorporate into your project, and you agree to a 3-year period, after those 3 years, you really need to make sure that you live up to what the contract says, or you'll be breaching the contract and you might owe money to the contributor. Same goes for things like sales and royalties. How do you split the money between you and your collaborators? That's what contracts are for. They clearly outline those things. Whereas a memorandum of understanding, that's probably something that you would use more as a partner within a partnership. This would be something that you could be a little bit more flexible on. You can create clauses in both of these things that are like escape clauses in a sense, that allow people to step away from a project if they have to. But a memorandum of understanding is something that you can use in the event of, like, say, co-working, right? You're renting a space and you need another person to help split the cost of the rent. You can create a simple memorandum of understanding that says, you're responsible for X amount of the rent and utilities. I'll be responsible for the same, and so on. Those are better, slightly more informal, but still, formal enough to protect you from being taken advantage of. So think about those things if you are planning on doing collaborations. But in general, you are at this point thinking about what are the things that you're going to need to get started. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Abraham to talk a little bit about crowdfunding and how to get that money.
So we got a little more information for you guys. Trying to go as fast as I can because of time wise. We're gonna start with like 2 types of crowdfunding, which is Kickstarter, Indigo, which are more like similar when it comes to the core objectives of them.
Sorry.
The website mainly creates to up and coming business startups. Contributors are asked to fund specific projects or startups. And we're gonna start with the Kickstarter. Kickstarter is designed to support creatives and inventors for specific time-limited endeavors. You have an one-time project you would like to bring to light, such as printing volume 1 of a comic book, then Kickstarter is the ideal place to make that happen. Some examples of people or projects that are being brought up by Kickstarter are Michelle that's a weird last name, Bukaski or something, sorry, who founded printed copies of her comic book, Eva's Demo. And then we have Adam Palmer, who released a new album through Kickstarter. Then Matthew and Mark McCallahan, who invented the fidget cube. I don't know what that is. It's for those, I don't know, gadgets. Then Ellen Lee, who designed the game Exploding Kittens. And then after we just talk about Kickstarter, we have Indigo, and it's better known to the community as a place where inventors and entrepreneurs in their early business stages can bring a product to market. That platform is smaller than Kickstarter, but has more flexible funding models, which are we have basically three types of ways you can get paid. One, time payment, all or nothing style. That basically means that you have to finish your project. Again, like Luis was saying, you have to put a schedule and say, I'm going to have this book ready by the end of this year. You have to finish, otherwise you don't get paid. And then they have another way, which is one-time payment, keep what you earn style. I tried to look for it, but I guess that was more flexible if you don't finish or not. Luis, have you heard about that style?
Yeah, basically the idea is that, keep what you earn is you get paid whatever amount of money gets donated or, invested in your particular campaign. So it's not the full amount, maybe. It might be, like half of it, half of whatever you set your goal to be, but you get, something as opposed to
Yeah.
nothing at all.
Nothing exactly. And then the last style of payment is an ongoing payment collection, paid out continuously after the initial end date. And probably they also can change, like probably some projects require the donors to give money to start the project. And then as it progresses, they'll keep installing payments. So that's really flexible about Indigo instead of Kickstarter. Then we have also the next one is Patreon, which is like Kickstarter and Indigo are both crowdfunding platforms. You offer to make a product and distribute it to your backers, but Patreon is not. It's not a crowdfunding platform. It's actually a membership platform. It's backed by accounts created by content creators who supply quality content to subscribers based on recurring donations, as well as offering recurring rewards for consistent supporters, like patrons. For example, one of the podcasts that I like, they have a Patreon. So the people who are donating more money, they get like other content that is exclusive to those people who pay. So you have access to first the content by paying monthly, and then you also have other content depending on how much you afford to that project. And then we have Gofundme, which is the last one I'm gonna talk about. It's more a cost-based donation plan. Enthusiasts open up charity campaigns for specific religious, socioeconomic, or environmental causes. Interested individuals can look up related campaigns and donate as much money as they deem suitable. The raised cash goes behind working for those causes. There are no possibilities for profit or returns. It's more focused on the emotional humanitarian side of crowdfunding rather than business startups. So this is definitely a little more different than the previous ones we talked about. This one is more, for example, let's say like there's somebody who have beat it by the cops and you need money for the lawyers or things like that. You end up going for a GoFundMe page or other projects, but it's a little more tricky because this one is not about a business and returns of more of a product. It's more of a fixing the, the world. And then,
Hmm.
Luis, you want to talk about more about the group bytes and other one that's in the PowerPoint?
Yeah, so as Abraham said, each one is basically like it's it has its own specific purpose, right? Patreon is the one that, as you can see here in the little quick guide, is probably best for creatives who already have an audience. If you already have a little bit of a following, Patreon could be a way for you to grow that following, but also begin doing regular work, that you might not be able to do otherwise because, you have that recurring income, right? You have that little bit of money that every month somebody is giving you. Your subscribers can obviously cancel their subscription, which means they no longer have access to whatever special perks you're offering. But Patreon is one of those ways in which you can definitely fund a project and get people really engaged and following you. Um, just like all of them, there are fees that are associated with this. So, as you can see there, Patreon does have a 5% service fee. So that means they take out 5% charge off of your money that you raise. Plus, they also charge you for every transaction. So, people are using their credit cards online to make a donation, to make a subscription, just like with all of these. And so, that credit card transaction is going to be anywhere between 3 to 5%, based on whatever service they're using, be it MasterCard, Visa, all of those. The same goes with Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and Gofundme. They all pretty much universally have that 5%. Some of them it might be different, depending on the project or the credit card processing. But there's different ways in which you get that payout, and I've personally used GoFundMe before, very early on in the fundraising for DSTL Arts, and it's a way for you to get some money to be able to get started. So that's kind of the idea really with all of these, is to get a little bit of money to get you started on your project. And in my personal opinion, you're better off getting, and keeping what you get, using that model. So the Indiegogo or GoFundMe platforms might be better in that sense. But you can always, go with the all or nothing, and you have maybe a lower fundraising goal, like maybe $200, $300 to get you started. Those are typically easier to get to than, $5,000, $6,000. And one of the things that you can do, especially if your artist project involves doing workshops, you can use GoFundMe. And then if you're creating a book, that people can subscribe to, you can use Patreon. And you can do a combination of the two. Or you can do Kickstarter and GoFundMe, and you do a combination of the two to get you to where you need to be able to cover the expenses for your projects.
And I guess, Luis, since like we're talking at the beginning of these workshops, is as long as you have a clear platform or idea what you want to create, is the way you're going to approach the next process, which is how I'm going to get these, how I'm going to pitch these to my investors, or people are going to sell my idea to, right? So it's always good to have that, okay, this is my project. Like we're just talking about the calendar. It's going to be a calendar of these and that. And then you can approach people and ask them for these funds.
That's right. And it's really important to understand also that a really successful crowdfunding campaign, just like any other donation campaign, it has to be in front of people's eyes. And in that sense, you really need to use your social media following and also create a long-term marketing plan. Marketing is one of those things that we'll cover a little bit more in depth later, just like, applying to grants and things like that. And creating a budget, a full-fledged budget, but understanding now that you have to create a plan for getting your fundraising campaign in front of people's eyes is going to be super valuable. And you can consider using services like one that Abraham found called Growth Turbine, or you can use something like MailChimp, which is what I use for DSTL Arts, to send emails, to people. And the beauty of some of these things, like with Patreon, Indiegogo, and MailChimp, is that you have integrations with other websites. For example, if you're using, say, Square, which I've talked about before, as your credit card processing provider, Square integrates with MailChimp. So when you sell something through Square and a person provides you with their email address, it can get transferred over into MailChimp, so that when you send an email, like a newsletter email through MailChimp, your customer that used Square to create their web order or whatever, they will get an email from you, and it's all official, it's all branded. MailChimp is free. It starts off free up until you reach a certain amount of subscribers. And if you choose to pay for MailChimp's extra services, you also get, the ability to schedule Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram posts in advance. So you don't have to do it there on the fly all the time. So there's benefits to creating these marketing strategies, these plans. And that does lead into the third phase, which is evaluation. You want to evaluate your progress from the beginning all the way through to the end and beyond. Are you tracking your progress and your engagement with your audience? Audience is super important. They're the reason why you will be able to fund your projects. So, maintain a schedule. Ask yourself always, what went right and where can I continue to improve? It's not like, once the project is over, that's it. You no longer have, ties or responsibilities to your audience. Remember what Eduardo Galeano said in the quote at the very beginning. Your audience, when they're listening to stories, they're sacrificing a little bit of their time to give it back to you. So, set benchmarks. Make sure that when you set your deadline, you work backwards and you create little milestones for yourself where you're able to check in with yourself and check in with your audience. Use your marketing strategy as an opportunity to not just promote what you have coming up, but also as a way for you to, understand who are the people that follow you. You can use Google Analytics to understand the region of the world that they're coming from. You can use that as a way to understand the demographic information. What age group are they a part of? You can also use social media as a way to create deeper engagement. You can get people's feedback on your work in progress if you're posting a work in progress video, or if you're doing a live stream from, say, your studio, or from even your drive home, and you're I don't know, sharing poetry, right? Like, there's definitely ways in which you can engage audience members to give you feedback on the work that you're producing, and that all ends up building an audience, which at the very end means they're going to be there when you finally release whatever it is that you're working towards, right? Whether that's an art show or a performance or a chapbook. When you have that engagement with your audience throughout the entire process, they're going to be there when it comes time to have that release party, and they're going to be the ones that actually buy your books right away, or buy your paintings or your prints, whatever the case might be. They're going to be investing in you, not just, time wise, but also financially. And it's only going to be to your benefit to engage them throughout that process. So with that said, there is a homework assignment for you. This is something that we are working on toward, basically throughout this whole process that you're in the Poet Artist Development Program. You're going to develop a manuscript, you're going to develop your own artist project, and it really is going to be to your benefit and our benefit as, the people working with you on this, to understand what your goals are. So create an outline of your artist project now. We're going to post this up on YouTube for you to watch later. We're going to obviously share this through Google Classroom for you to be able to look at the handout, look at the video again. But that's also going to be a chance for you to actually upload an outline for us to help you develop. Define the project goals. Refer back to that section and think about, the who, the what, the when, and the how much. Establish your assets and needs. Begin thinking about, what are the resources that are available to you now? Where can you go to, get your inspiration? Where can you go to, get feedback? Obviously, you have DSTL Arts as an option for that. And also begin brainstorming your evaluation and marketing strategy. Start setting deadlines for yourself and start setting up benchmarks. And think about, beyond DSTL Arts, how are you going to promote your book? How are you going to promote your chapbook, your artist book? And what are you going to do? Are you going to post once a week to your social media? Are you going to maybe do once a month, like live stream where you're inviting people to see the process of you creating? Those are little things that you can do now to help you, motivate you, and also potentially fund work that you may not be able to get funding for right away. This month, the California Arts Council, as an example, just opened up their grant programs for organizations. In, I believe, March, they're going to open up their individual artist fellowship grant. If you can begin your planning process now, by the time that the California Arts Council has their grant application open for the individual artist fellowship, you will completely be ready to write the grant proposal and submit it and potentially get a grant. A $5,000 grant can go a long way for an emerging artist. So this is why we're giving you this as your homework assignment. Take this serious. Take this as serious as your audience will take it. And remember, this is something that will develop over time. This is something that is considered a living document. So, don't feel like you have to be firmly set in the things that you're brainstorming now, but know that once you set your deadline, that's going to be really the time frame that you should strive to meet. And so, this strategy right here will hopefully get you through this whole process. And of course, as always, Abraham and I are available to help you. Our emails are there on the last slide that you see in front of you. And there's a lot of different ways in which we're here as a resource for you. So
In spirit.
in spirit, yeah. So that's going to be it for today. We've gone a little bit over our time, but I really do hope that you found this information useful. And there's always an opportunity for you to give us feedback, and for us to be, again, a resource for you. So thanks, everyone. I'm gonna end our recording now, but I do wish you all a good night. And I'll stick around for a minute or two if anybody has any specific questions.